The world was still breathing. A low hum moved through the dawn, wind sliding over stone, through ferns, through the rib cage of a sleeping earth. Mist coiled across the plains, touched by the molten gold of a rising sun. Every blade of grass seemed to glisten with a memory older than light itself. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of wet soil and fern pollen. Somewhere, a distant waterfall murmured, its echo drifting like a lullaby to the living. The sound of insects shimmered beneath it, a constant thread tying one heartbeat to another. This was the hour when the world forgot danger, when the land itself exhaled peace. A flock of pterosaurs glided above the valley, their wings catching sunlight in arcs of silver below. Rivers glided through the landscape like molten glass, splitting and rejoining, carving stories into silt. A herd of Myosaurus stood among the morning haze. Their movements were slow, reverent, tail swaying, nostrils steaming in the chill air. Mothers checked nests of earth and reeds, touching eggs with the gentleness of eternity. Hatchlings chirped, their small cries blending into the hum of the valley, a melody that only the old earth could understand. Among them moved one mother who lingered behind. Her skin bore the faint sheen of age, her crest curved like a crown dulled by time. She pressed her snout against the soil, not searching for a food, but feeling the heartbeat beneath. The ground trembled, faintly, like a memory too quiet to name. The tremor passed. The herd moved on. The light shifted, but something had whispered to her, a warning the wind could not translate. Above the horizon, clouds split open into rivers of firelight. The sky shimmered not blue, but pale gold, as if dawn itself was uncertain. Somewhere beyond the curve of the world, something moved and seen and sounded, a breath too vast for this peaceful place to feel. She raised her head. Her eyes reflected the sun's, the real one burning behind her, and another, distant, flickering like a second heartbeat in the heavens. The hatchling pressed against her leg, chirping softly, unaware. He smelled like moss and warmth, the scent of continuation. She leaned down and exhaled softly. The way ancient mothers had done for millions of years, a language of comfort. Wordless but infinite. Wine swept across the valley, ferns bent. The world glowed brighter. The faint arc of light overhead deepened, a streak of silver fire drawing across the sky. For a moment, it seemed beautiful, a miracle painted above the living. Creatures paused to watch, entranced by wonder they did not understand. But wonder has a twin, and its name is warning. The sky's radiance began to fade into a colder hue. The warmth drained. The silence deepened. Every sound, the insects, the birds, the river, dimmed as if the earth itself held its breath. She turned eastward, instinct tugging at the edges of peace. Her gaze found the horizon, glowing strangely, like metal cooling after a forge. For one fragile instant, everything was perfect, the colors, the stillness. The golden mist clinging to the herd like a promise of eternity, and then a shadow crossed the light. The hatchling pressed closer. She lowered her head, wrapping her body around him, not in fear, but in reflex, an ancient vow repeated without thought. The air trembled again, faint but sure. The earth whispered once more, and this time it sounded like memory breaking, and in that fleeting breath before the first shadow fell. The world still believed in forever, but forever was running out. Every paradise forgets the sound of danger until it returns. The nesting plains stretched endlessly, a sea of gold and shadow rolling beneath a sky the color of early memory. Morning light slid across the land like a quiet tide, revealing a world that had not yet learned fear. Rivers hummed in slow rhythm, their surfaces rippling with the breath of the wind. The scent of silt and sun-warmed algae drifted through the air, thick with the sweetness of fern pollen. Dragonflies stitched silver lines above the water, their wings glinting like shards of glass. Life moved everywhere, soft, deliberate, unhurried. The Maiasaura herds were scattered across the lowlands, each mother guarding a nest of mud and reeds molded with care. Their calls rippled across the open plain, low, harmonic, filled with an ancient patience. Each sound blended with the rustle of grass, the creak of trees, the quiet thrum of earth. A young hatchling stumbled from its nest, tumbling down the slope in a clumsy roll. Its mother lowered her head, nostrils brushing against the tiny creature, and nudged it gently upright. The hatchling blinked, chirped, and pressed itself against a leg, comfort found in warmth and scent. Round them, the world thrived. Pterosaurus traced lazy spirals in the high air, wings catching invisible thermals. In the shallows, turtles lifted their heads to taste sunlight. From the reeds came the quick movements of small feathered creatures, the primitive ancestors of birds, flashing red and green in the golden haze. It was an age before loneliness, before endings. Every breath belonged to the balance of things. Farther down the valley, the river split into braided channels. Schools of fish flickered through the crunts, scattering when a shadow passed overhead. A Tyrannosaurus in the distance, vast, dark, majestic, bent to drink, not to hunt. Even predators were quiet this morning, lulled by the illusion that time was endless. The earth pulsed with peace, the kind of peace that hums in your bones. Above the horizon, clouds drifted in great, slow formations, their edges glowing white against the ember sky. Sunlight scattered through dust and pollen, turning the air into gold mist. The herd moved together across it, their forms breaking and reforming like moving sculptures. The narrator's voice, calm and reverent. This was the rhythm of the world. An endless circle of dawn and dusk, of nurture and renewal, every life. A note in a song that never ceased. The mothers grazed on low ferns, their tails sweeping gently to keep insects away. The young followed, learning to mimic, to taste, to move with grace. They did not know fear. They had no word for it, no shape for a loss. Their world was built on the certainty of mornings, and yet, somewhere beyond the farthest ridge, the light was changing. It began subtly, a faint silver shimmer that wavered above the horizon. The air held a new taste, dry, metallic, uneasy. A gust moved through the valley, strange and cold, carrying with it the smell of ash from a sky still clear. A young male lifted his head. His nostrils flared, his pupils narrowed. He felt it first, the disturbance that had no sound. For a heartbeat, everything paused. Even the dragonflies froze in mid-flight. But something shifted in the air. The phrase lingers like a whisper in the wind. The mother lifted her head too, sensing what the young could not name. She listened, not with ears, but with instinct older than reason. Somewhere beneath the soil, a tremor moved, light as a sigh, deep as memory. The sound of the river dulled, the warmth of the sun thinned. She looked skyward, but the heavens betrayed nothing, only a faint halo of brightness where the sun met haze. The moment stretched, quiet and certain. Then a breeze returned, and with it, life's gentle noise resumed. The hatchlings chirped again. The herd moved onward. The rhythm returned, but not untouched from afar. The shimmer of light over the plains seemed almost beautiful, a mirage painted by distant sand. Heat, yet to the mother, it felt different. The colors seemed sharper, the shadows longer. Even the insects seemed to hum in a different key. She lowered her head, brushing her snout through the reeds, hiding her unease in motion. Her hatchling followed, unaware, its tiny claws tracing circles in the damp soil. Life continued, Pretending not to notice that something had already changed, the camera of the mind pans outward, the valley stretching into infinity, sunlight sliding off scales, dust glimmering in the air. Time itself seems to linger, unwilling to move forward. Peace, the narrator murmurs, is never as eternal as it believes. The herd reached the river's edge again, where water shimmered like molten sky. Mothers dipped their heads to drink. The hatchlings splashed, chasing ripples, laughing in the only way their kind could, through motion, through sound, through breath, somewhere beyond the horizon. The silver shimmer brightened for a second, then vanished behind the curve of the world. The moment was over, the prophecy forgotten. But memory, even unformed, leaves a taste. The mother paused once more, eyes tracing the place where sky met land. A soft breeze brushed against her crest, warm, reassuring, deceitful. She exhaled. Low and steady, the world exhaled with her dot, and once again. The valley sang the lullaby of life, a harmony too perfect to last. The mother had 3 hatchlings, 3 sparks of fragile rhythm, in a world that never stopped breathing. Dot were strong, their legs sure, their voices bright and sharp. But the smallest was slow. He stumbled more than he walked, his eyes, larger than they should have been, always seemed to search for something beyond what the others could see. He was curious, too. Curious. He wandered too far, stopped too often, looked too long. She never named him. Names belong to memory, and memory belonged to the earth. But she knew him by scent, by heartbeat, by the subtle tremor of his breath when he slept against her side. Days passed in golden rhythm. Morning mist would rise from the plains, and the air shimmered with the hum of dragonflies. The mother led her 3 down to the shallow pools, safe places where reeds grew tall and water reflected the slow turning of clouds. There, the hatchlings played. They splashed and chirped, discovering the reflections of their own existence, startled by their mirrored shapes, chasing the ripples they created. The smallest often watched in silence, staring into the water as if the sky beneath the surface held answers. Sometimes he would lift his head suddenly, eyes following something invisible in the air, a drift of sound, a shadow, a thought. The mother would nudge him gently, grounding him back to the world of warmth and scent and heartbeat. Above them, the pterosaurs drifted like fragments of sky. Ferns swayed. The day was long and kind. When the sun began to tilt toward evening, the herd gathered closer. Dust shimmered round their legs as they moved. The mothers hummed low calls, soft, resonant, rhythmic, guiding their young back to the mounds. The mother's eyes lingered on the horizon. The light had begun to redden earlier each day, deepening from gold to copper to something almost bruised. The air cooled faster now, as if the season itself was holding its breath. Still, life went on. She pressed her body around her nest each night, a fortress of flesh and devotion. The hatchlings slept beneath the shelter of her warmth, their tiny chests rising and falling against her ribs. She could feel each one, each fragile pulse, sensing with her own. When storms gathered, the world darkened in waves of wind. The sky rolled with heavy clouds, bruised purple and green. The herd would huddle close. The mothers stood over their young, wings of muscle and skin spreading like blankets of the living earth. Rain fell hard. Thunder grumbled across the valley. The mother lowered her body. Enclosing her 3 within her warmth, she could feel their small hearts flutter beneath her. Fast, wild, and knowing. Her warmth was the only world they knew. By dawn, the air would clear again. The plains would steam under the newborn light. The river sang louder after each storm, a voice of renewal, of cycles older than understanding. But beneath that rhythm, something was changing. She could taste it. The insects flew lower now, hugging the damp ground. The sky sometimes pulsed at night, distant flashes that did not belong to lightning. They came without thunder, brief and silent, like a heartbeat behind the clouds. When she drank from the river, the water had a different taste, faintly bitter, as though the earth itself had swallowed something it could not digest still. She kept her herd close, her hatchlings closer. The two strong ones would nudge each other playfully. But the smallest always lingered behind. He struggled to keep up. His steps left uneven prints in the mud. Sometimes he stopped to stare at falling leaves, following their spiral with the wide-eyed awe of new life. Sometimes he simply stood still, feeling the wind press against his small frame at night. When the others slept, she would lower her head beside him. His breath matched hers, tiny and perfect. Their bodies shared a single rhythm, a quiet language of existence older than words. The narrator's voice, low and soft. She doesn't know how fragile forever is. The sky deepened into red. The wind brushed across her crest. She turned her gaze to the distance, to the line where light bled into shadow. The faint flicker appeared again, like a pulse in the horizon, vanishing almost as soon as it came. She made a sound then, a low, questioning hum. The hatchling stirred. His small head lifted, eyes reflecting the same strange light. For a moment, it looked as if the sky itself was burning in his gaze. Then the light was gone. The world fell quiet again, as if pretending nothing had happened. She brushed her snout against him, a gesture of comfort. He responded with a faint chirp, pressing his tiny body closer to her throat. His heartbeat steadied. She closed her eyes. For a moment, the illusion returned. Peace felt eternal again. The sounds of the herd drifted through the mist, the rustle of tails, the sigh of sleeping breath. The wind carried the scent of wet grass and ash above. The stars flickered softly, distant, indifferent, the same stars that had watched over every birth and every extinction before. The mother didn't look up. She only listened, to the sound of her hatchling's tiny breaths, the slow thrum of the river beyond, the whisper of time moving forward. Morning would come again. And with it, another day in paradise, a paradise already forgetting the sound of danger. The air grew heavier. It didn't happen all at once. At first. It was only a feeling, a strange thickness that dulled the light, a weight pressing down from nowhere. The wind no longer carried direction. It only wandered, restless and lost. The birds vanished first. Their calls faded mid-cry, leaving the sky hollow. Even the dragonflies, once shimmering like shards of sunlight, disappeared into the reeds. The silence that followed was too complete, too deliberate, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The river darkened, not from storm, but from shadow. Its silver shimmer dulled to lead. The reflection of the sky had turned opaque, a strange dimness folding across the water's surface. Then it came, a single streak of light carved across the heavens. So bright it burned through clouds and memory alike. It moved too fast for the mind to understand. Trailing a silver wand through the blue, every creature looked up. Heads tilted, eyes widened, hearts stilled, and still there was no sound. Only a silence so deep it throbbed against the chest. The mother lifted her head slowly, nostrils flaring. The air was hot, unnaturally hot, though the sun had dimmed. Round her, the herd rippled with confusion. The young huddled closer to the adults. Calls began, short, uncertain, questioning. And beneath them, the earth began to hum, a faint vibration, subtle at first, almost like the low growl of thunder still too far to fear. But it didn't fade. It climbed. Through the grass, through the soil, through the bones. The earth took its first breath of fear. The sound was everywhere and nowhere at once. a resonance that made water tremble and air taste like metal. The mother pressed low to the ground, spreading her body over her hatchlings. They whimpered softly, confused but trusting. Her heartbeat quickened. The smallest one's heartbeat matched it. The hum grew into a pulse, and that pulse into a rhythm, as if the planet itself had found a heartbeat of its own. Then came the wind. Sudden and sharp dotted tore across the plain with a dry, electric hiss, flattening grass and scattering dust, trees bent backward, branches twisting in unnatural arcs. Yet there was no storm, no rain, no thunder. No lightning from above. The dust did not fall. It rose upward. Defying gravity, carried by invisible hands toward the darkening light. The herd grew restless. Calls broke the silence, sharp and frightened. Mothers gathered their young, legs shifting nervously. The air vibrated with their unease, a chorus of low, resonant moans echoing through the plain. The mother turned, calling softly for her three. The smallest was closest, pressed against her leg. The other two hesitated, uncertain, wide-eyed. She let out a deep bellow, a sound that trembled through the valley like an ancient prayer. The herd began to move, slow at first, then faster. Dust rose round them, wrapping their legs in ghostly coils. The sky itself seemed to bend, the horizon warping under invisible heat. Then, the sound, not thunder, not storm, but the groan of the world itself. It came from above, vast, low, immeasurable, the sound of stone breaking in the sky. Mountains would have knelt to it if they could. Every creature froze. The vibration became a roar. The air flashed white, then red, then white again. The mother staggered, her breath catching in her throat. Her young cried out, small, piercing calls swallowed by the immensity of the sound. The earth trembled violently. Cracks split open in the plains, thin at first, then widening, bleeding with dust and steam. Water burst upward from the riverbanks, flashing into mist. The ground was no longer stable. It heaved, alive with chaos. The sky changed color, again orange, then green, then a deep, bruised violet that devoured the horizon. The air smelled of iron and smoke. The mother pushed her hatchlings forward, desperate to reach higher ground. The smallest stumbled. She turned back, nudging him up with her snout, pushing against the weight of wind that now screamed like a living thing. The herd thundered. Across the valley, hundreds moving as one desperate pulse, pterosaurs shrieked above, diving and scattering like torn fabric. The river split apart under invisible force, waves climbing upward, fighting gravity before collapsing again. And still, there was light, brighter than day, brighter than life. A distant flash turned the horizon to glass for a moment. Everything stood still. Even the wind froze mid-motion. Then came the second roar, deeper, heavier, endless. The sound traveled through everything, through skin, through stone, through memory. The smallest hatchling cried, a sound too soft to survive the weight of the world's agony. The mother gathered them close once more. A call rose over the chaos, long, echoing, filled with something no language could name. It was the sound of instinct defying inevitability, glowing and ending. It coated her skin, her crest, her eyes. She blinked through the haze, heart still hammering. The smallest hatchling pressed his head under her chin. She felt his breath, quick, frightened, alive. She turned her gaze east again, where the first streak had fallen. The sky there glowed, not with light, but with fire. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of ash and salt. And then, for just one breath, silence again. A silence that wasn't peace this time. It was waiting. The sky-burned dot it began as a glow beyond the horizon, a pulse that outshone the sun itself. Then, without warning, the heavens tore open. A second sun rose, not in warmth, but in violence dotted rip through the clouds with blinding purity. A wound of light so vast it erased color, erased shadow, erased time. For one impossible heartbeat, the plains were brighter than creation. Every blade of grass glowed white. Every river turned to liquid light. For that instant, the world was both infinite and ending. Then the wave came, and turned to fire dot ground to storm. Light became weight. The sound hit last. A thunder that wasn't thunder, but the cry of a planet breaking. It rolled through the valley in a wall of force, flattening forests, hurling stones like rain. The Myasora herd broke into chaos. Cries tore through the smoke. Deep, guttural, desperate. Mothers bellowed for their young. The air seared their throats. The sky rained ash that glowed like embers. The mother roared above the noise, calling to her 3 hatchlings. She could see to ahead, running, terrified, following the shape of the herd. But the smallest was behind again, stumbling, eyes wild with confusion. She pushed forward, her muscles screaming. The heat sliced through her skin. Round her, the world blurred, trees igniting in bursts of orange flame, rivers turning black and steaming, the sky folding into fire. The light no longer came from above. It came from everywhere. The air itself was burning. She reached the river bank, a place that had once been soft and golden. Now it was boiling. The air shimmered in waves. She turned back. The smallest hatchling was gone. Smoke rolled over the field like a living thing. Shapes moved inside it, silhouettes of others running, falling, vanishing. Her heart thundered. She called out again, a long, broken sound that rose above the roar of wind and flame, and then she saw him, a small, trembling form, half buried under a fallen branch, crying weakly. The ground quaked beneath him, the soil alive with shock. She looks back once, and the world disappears. She ran. Every step was agony. The heat clawed at her lungs. Ash rained like snow, soft, endless, deadly. The light behind her grew white again, erasing the horizon. She reached him, lowering herself to the ground. Her body shielded his from the rain of fire. She pushed the burning branch aside with her snout, ignoring the pain, the blistering of her own flesh. The hatchling blinked up at her, eyes reflecting a world aflame. He chirped once, weakly. She answered with a low hum, almost soothing, as if to tell him that all was well. Even when nothing was, the air tasted divine and sorrow. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The river beside them roared, louder than before, swelling with steam and ash. The current had turned black, carrying trees, nests, bones, all the shapes of what once lived. The ground cracked again. A tremor rolled beneath her, tilting the land. Water spilled toward them. She pushed him toward the edge, one step. Then another. Behind them, the sound returned. A low, endless thunder that grew deeper, closer, crueler. She knew it was not a storm. It was the end itself, coming for all. The hatchling tried to move, but his legs gave out. She lowered her head, pressing her snout against his side, urging him forward with every ounce of strength left in her. The river surged, swallowing the bank. She waded in, the heat cutting through her flesh like knives. The current pulled at her, heavy with silt and ruin. The hatchling cried again, high-pitched, desperate. She nudged him upward, forcing him toward the floating debris, toward a small rise of mud that still held shape. One last act of instinct, one last act of love. Her body convulsed as the shock wave hit. Trees tore from the roots, the air howled, rocks flew like arrows. She wrapped herself round him, shielding him from the worst of it. The river was no longer water. It was motion and light and death that she pushed. Hard, the current took him for an instant. His body floated, small, fragile, alive, carried downstream, away from her, away from the fire. She tried to follow, but the waves struck again. The sky turned white, then red, then black. She roared once more, not in pain, but in defiance. The sound cracked through the storm like memory refusing to die. Then the ground collapsed beneath her and the world roared its final breath. Fire swept over the plains. The herds were gone. The air, once full of song, was now heavy with silence. The river glowed faintly in the dark, carrying with it the drifting shapes of what once was. Ash fell like snow and in the hollow where she had stood. The wind circled gently, as if remembering the shape of devotion carved into the earth. Then, finally, there was silence. When the fire died, the silence began at first. It wasn't true silence. It was a ringing, the echo of what once screamed, a hum that lingered in the air as if the sky itself were trying to remember how to breathe. Then, slowly, even that faded, the world exhaled, and nothing answered. Ash covered everything. The plains were gone, replaced by a colorless sea of dust and shattered stone. Trees were black pillars, stripped of leaves and sound. Rivers no longer ran. They steamed quietly, whispering to the buried earth. The sky had forgotten blue. It hung in shades of iron and smoke. Sunlight came dim and distant, as if afraid to touch what was left. The mother lay beneath the ruin, her form preserved in layers of silt and time. Her body curved protectively round the space where her hatchling once was. The shape of love had survived where life had not. Days passed into years, years into centuries. The air cooled, the fires stilled. The planet turned slowly under veils of dust. Rain came, hesitant, weak. It hissed against the ground, dissolving ash into rivers of grey. The rain fell for ages, weighing down mountains, carving valleys. Where the river once roared in fury, it now crept quietly, tracing the bones of memory. Time began its quiet work. Grass returned first, fragile blades pushing through the powder of centuries. Moss clung to the edges of fallen trunks. Tiny creatures screamed through cracks, blind and patient. The air softened. The wind began to carry sound again. The hum of insects, the whisper of leaves that no longer remembered flame. And beneath all that rebirth, deep in the earth, she waited. Stone replaced flesh. The hollows of her ribs filled with minerals. The delicate pattern of her bones, each curve, each fracture, turned to crystal memory. What was once heartbeat became fossil. What was once warmth became permanence. The hatchling's bones lay near hers, small and fragile, untouched by scavengers or time. Together, they became part of the same sculpture. A mother's final gesture frozen in eternity. Above, the river changed course. It cut deeper into the valley, uncovering what time had hidden. The current carried pebbles that brushed gently against her fossilized form, as if the world itself was tracing her shape again. But time does not forget. The centuries turned. Mountains rose where plains had been. Forests grew, then withered. Then grew again. The stars shifted overhead. The world became new, over and over. But beneath it all, she remained. Animals of different ages walked the same ground. Mammals with soft fur. Birds that sang the language of survival. Their shadows crossed over her resting place, unaware of what lay beneath. The story of a love so deep it survived extinction. Rain fell again. This time, the drops were warm, clean. They filtered through layers of soil, finding their way to her resting bones. Water caressed the fossils, gleaming faintly in dim light. The minerals shimmered, quartz, calcite, traces of iron, blending into the stone. Her outline became part of the riverbed, her form no longer creature or relic, but symbol. The river that once drowned her child now carried dust, then memory, then light, and through that river the world remembered her, not in name, not in image, but in essence, in every act of shelter, every instinct to protect, every heartbeat that refused to yield. A single fern sprouted beside her fossil, roots curling round her stone frame. When the wind passed through its leaves, it made a soft, rhythmic whisper, almost like breathing. The forest grew again. Trees stretched skyward, their roots threading through the ancient soil. Birds returned to sing from their branches. The air shimmered with life, smaller, quicker, but still carrying the pulse of what had been Dot, and beneath it all, she stayed, part of the foundation of the new world. Her bones no longer belonged to her alone. They belonged to the earth, to the cycle that forgets names but remembers love. One day, the river shifted once more. Its edge broke into a cliffside. And there, in a slice of stone, her shape emerged into sunlight again, a curve of bone, a ribcage frozen in devotion. The world looked upon her once more, not with eyes, but with wonder. Millions of years had passed. The giants were gone. The sky had changed, but the gesture of that mother, curled around her young, protecting him from fire, endured, because some stories are written not in words, but in earth itself. Now, millions of years later, hands brush the dust away. The desert hums under a patient sun. Wind drifts low, moving the colorless sand like a breath remembering motion. Between scattered boulders, a ridge of stone rises, layered with ages, each line a sentence in the earth's quiet story. A team of scientists kneels at its base. Their shadows stretch long and thin across the pale ground. Tools lie beside them, trowels, brushes, notebooks, the instruments of modern curiosity set against the bones of deep time. One of them, a woman with earth-streaked gloves, works in silence. The dust clings to her lashes. Every sweep of her brush is deliberate, reverent, beneath her hand. The stone begins to reveal a curve, the arc of a fossilized nest. She leans closer, breath catches. Within the nest, pressed into eternity, lies the intertwined skeleton of a mother and her young. The bones are delicate, their forms perfectly preserved. As if the world had paused mid-heartbeat and decided never to move again, the team gathers. Quietly, no one speaks. The wind hushes round them, carrying only the faint whistle of the dunes. For a moment, the woman forgets the present. The air seems thicker, older. The sunlight warms the fossil, glinting in tiny mineral sparkles, fragments of quartz and calcite. Like stars trapped in stone, she imagines the world as it once was, golden plains, the hum of dragonflies, the distant call of a herd. She can almost feel the tremor of the mother's breath, the weight of devotion pressed into the earth. And as the dust lifts from the fossil's curve, the shape becomes clear, the mother arching over her child, encircling him with the eternal grace of protection. The woman exhales softly. Every fossil was once a heartbeat. Her voice breaks the silence, but only gently, like a prayer whispered to time. Round her, cameras click, notes are written, measurements recorded, but the science of the moment feels smaller than its spirit. This is not discovery. This is communion. She closes her notebook, runs a fingertip across the fossil surface. It is smooth, cool. The texture speaks of rain that fell before humans dreamed, of rivers that have changed their paths 1,000 times. The wind rises again, swirling dust into a soft veil. The sound it makes, low, rhythmic, hollow, almost resembles a call. Not wind, not memory, but something between. Far off, the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the sky with amber and rose. The light settles across the dig site, turning each grain of dust into a shimmer of gold. The woman lifts her eyes to the horizon. Above her, clouds drift in the same slow rhythm the Maiasaura once knew. The pattern of their motion, gentle, cyclical, feels like time breathing again. In the distance, something glints. An arrow thread of silver winding through the plain. The river, the same river that once ran red with ash, now alive again, carving through stone and history. She smiles faintly. Some rivers never forget, the others pause, following her gaze. The river catches the last of the sunlight and sends it flickering across the ridge, illuminating the fossil in warm reflection. The air vibrates softly, not sound, but presence. It feels as if the earth is remembering itself. Night approaches. The team packs their tools. But she lingers, kneeling beside the fossil. She presses a palm gently against the rock. It's a small gesture, but through it, a bridge forms between two worlds separated by epochs, a connection beyond language, beyond species, beyond extinction. Above, the first stars appear, ancient, patient, the same ones that watched the mother's final night. The wind settles into stillness. The desert cools. Somewhere, an owl calls, the modern echo of a voice that once filled forests long gone. The woman stands, brushing sand from her knees. She turns to leave, but looks back once more. The fossil catches starlight, glowing faintly against the darkness, not as death, but as memory illuminated. She feels it then, the strange comfort of continuity. That even after world's end, something endures, the instinct to protect, the will to nurture, the pulse of care written into the fabric of life itself. The scene widens, a vast aerial stretch of land bathed in twilight. Where the plains once were, there now lies a quiet desert. Yet somewhere beneath its surface, countless stories remain. Bones curled in embrace, seeds turned to stone, dreams turned to dust but not forgotten. Because time does not erase, it transforms. The camera of imagination drifts upward, past the ridge, past the horizon, into the vast calm of the evening sky. The river gleams below, silver, patient, endless. And the world breathes again. Every fossil was once a heartbeat. Some rivers never forget. The screen fades to black. The sound of a distant heartbeat echoes once, twice, then stills, leaving only wind and light.